Hey folks, I'm Rob Franek. I'm Editor-in-Chief here at the Princeton Review. Thank you, as always, for joining us for this, our SAT series, where we help you work out pesky SAT problems. We do it together so that you can expand your personal knowledge of that gatekeeper of a test. The result of the time that we spent together today, you're going to be super well prepared to crush the SAT come test day. Today's segment is all about purpose questions, specifically reading and analyzing purpose questions on the SAT reading test. The question that we'll work on today comes from our book at the Princeton Review. It's called SAT Premium Prep. All of the specifics around that title are right here below on the info card. You can buy the book should you wish. You can also simply watch right along here on screen as we work through this question together. And let's remember, and we're going to say it again, that today we are talking about analyzing purpose questions on the SAT reading test. I'm noting that again because the number of analyzing purpose questions varies from test to test, but you can count on seeing as many as 10 of these on the SAT reading test, which is, of course, significant, but the value of the strategy that we're teaching today does not stop with those measly 10 questions. You can use this same approach 100%. It will 100% apply to lots and lots of other question types on the SAT reading test, namely analyzing word choice. Hence, earning content mastery on this strategy today will have a great, big, positive impact on your SAT reading score. Feel the power in it, friends. So, without further preamble, let's together take a look at our analyzing purpose question. It's number 23 in our book, and right here on screen, question 23 reads, and I quote, the reference to amendments to the Clean Air Act primarily serve to... Now, right off the bat, we need to ask ourselves which words in this question make it a purpose question. Friends, if you've pointed to the word serves to, then well done, you were exactly right. This is a gifted group. I knew it from when we first entered this virtual room. Those words, they tell us that this question is asking what the reference serves to do. In other words, it asks about the purpose or the why that the author includes the reference. That said, let's keep in mind other common phrases that are literal giveaways to IDing, analyzing purpose questions. The phrase, and I quote, in order to. So for example, and I quote, the reference to amendments to the Clean Air Act is included primarily in order to. So, folks, we're going to keep a watch out for serves to and in order to phraseology on the SAT reading test because they are literally giant buoys indicating analyzing purpose questions. Now, I know that many of you have been watching these videos dutifully, and hence you could verbatim give the Princeton Review's SAT basic approach. But for those of you who may be joining us for the very first time, welcome. I'll do a quick review on those hallowed steps. Again, it's called the Princeton Review's SAT reading basic approach. There are 5 steps altogether. Step 1, read the blurb. Step 2, select and understand the question. Step 3, read what you need. Step 4, mark the answer in the text. And step 5, personal favorite of mine, use process of elimination. Now, if you're anything like other students around the planet, when they first approach purpose questions, they tend to make mistakes with a few specific points in the basic approach. One of the biggest mistakes that we've seen is around step 2. And again, step 2, I'll refresh your memory, is select and understand the question. Lots and lots of test takers, when reading a purpose question, don't realize that the question is asking why the author said something. Instead, lots and lots of students focus on what the author said instead of why they said it. Next, when students read what they need from the passage, that's of course step 3 of the basic approach, lots of times they read a window that is far too narrow. Sometimes they read just the lines that are mentioned in the questions, or they read just one sentence that includes the question topic. And when they do that, they're focusing just on what the author said, and they're not looking at the bigger context, the larger context that tells us why the author said something. So when those students move on to step 4, they definitely mark the answer in the text, but oftentimes they're just marking what the author said and not why they said it. One last mistake that I will highlight, we've seen several of our students make this. When students consider the answer choices themselves for purpose questions, lots and lots of times they get thrown off by abstract language that shows up in the answer choices for purpose questions. Thank you, College Board, creators of all things SAT. Those students have a really hard time matching that language back to the topics that the author actually discussed. So in order to be more successful with purpose questions, there are 3 simple and score-improving things that we're going to highlight today to get you out of that pickle. Number 1, you're going to read a few lines before and after the lines of the topic mentioned in the question. Second, you're going to match abstract language to answer choices back to the specifics in the passage. And number 3, we're going to remember to answer the why question, not the what question. We're going to pound on that point as we move through this video. Friends, of course, there is no better time than right now to put this list of sage tips into concrete action. As we said before, we're going to do it together. We're going to start with step 1 of the basic approach, and we're going to read the blurb. I'm going to read the entire thing to you. I quote, "This passage is from Charles Pettit, Hazy Days in Our Parks," which originally appeared in Smithsonian Magazine, copyright 2005 by Charles Pettit. Step 2, we're going to select and understand the question. The first part is kind of silly easy, as question 23 has already been selected for us. That said, let's make sure that we understand the question by rephrasing it into an actual question. I quote, "The reference to amendments in the Clean Air Act primarily serves to..." We're going to rephrase it into an actual question. We could say, and I quote, "Why does the author include the reference to the amendments in the Clean Air Act?" Leading us to step 3. Of course, let's read what we need from the passage itself. But in order to read what we need, first we have to find what we need. And question 23 happens to be the first of a specific question in the passage. And the specific questions on the SAT reading test tend to come roughly in order of where you can find the answers in the passage. So you can be pretty sure that the answer to question 23 will come near the beginning of the passage. So I'll start skimming the beginning of the passage, and I'm going to look for some lead words from the question. Specifically, I'm going to look for the words amendments, and I'm going to look for the words Clean Air Act. Here's the first paragraph. So we're going to start here with line 1, and we're going to scan together. Now, we can see pretty quickly in line 7, the lead words that we just mentioned, amendments and Clean Air Act. So we found what we need in the passage, and now let's take the extra beat and read what we need. I'm going to read, I'm going to first bracket this entire paragraph just to remind myself that this is the window that I need to answer question 23. Okay, so now let's read with the question in our mind, and I'll read it to you. "Ever since Congress created the first national park at Yellowstone in 1872, the parks have enjoyed special legal protections. In 1916, the National Park Service was set up to maintain areas unpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. Additional legal backing came in 1977 when amendments to the Clean Air Act gave parks the highest priority, designating them as Class 1 areas. The law is emphatic. Congress hereby declares as a national goal the prevention of any future and the remedying of any existing impairment of visibility in mandatory Class 1 federal areas, which impairment results from man-made air pollution." End quote. Now, our next step is to mark the answer in the text. And as I mentioned, a frequent mistake that people make with purpose questions is that they underline the sentence that mentions the question topic itself. So students would likely then underline additional legal backing came in 1977 when amendments to the Clean Air Act gave parks the highest priority, designating them as Class 1 areas. But instead, I need to think about the larger context, the broader context, and I need to think about what the author was trying to do in this paragraph. Asking yourself, why did the author include that mention of the amendments? So I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of the paragraph with the thesis statement, where it is given, specifically the thesis statement for this paragraph, and it tells me, and I'll quote, "Ever since Congress created the first national park, the parks have enjoyed special legal protections," end quote. So it's a fairly good bet that anything else that the author mentions in this paragraph is there to help make the point that the parks have enjoyed special legal protections. And in fact, in that latter sentence, they do say that additional legal backing came in 1977 when the amendments to the Clean Air Act gave parks the highest priority. So it does sound like the amendments to the Clean Air Act were mentioned because they were additional legal backing. And it's helping the author make the point that the parks have enjoyed those special legal protections. Now, I've marked an answer in the passage to the why question. Specifically, why did the author mention the amendments to the Clean Air Act? And now I'm ready to employ step 5, personal favorite, process of elimination. Let's take a look at the answer choices for question number 23. Answer choice A says the author's purpose is to cite changes that had detrimental effects. Now, I mentioned earlier that the answer choices for purpose questions have abstract language, and we can see an example of that right here in front of us. There's nothing in this answer choice about amendments, and there's nothing about Clean Air Act or even special legal protections. Instead, I have abstract words like changes and detrimental effects. And in order to deal with this answer choice successfully, I'll have to match those abstract words back to specifics in the paragraph. I'm going to start with changes, and I'm going to work in bite-sized pieces. So the question I'm going to ask, was the author citing changes or mentioning changes? The answer is yes, the amendments were in fact changes. But what about detrimental effects? Did the author mention any detrimental effects? Detrimental, of course, means harmful, but the author said that these amendments were additional legal protections, right? So those were not a harmful or detrimental effect, so it doesn't match what's in the passage. Hence, we can confidently eliminate answer choice A. We're going to move on to answer choice B, and that says that the author's purpose was to provide support for a previous statement. Now, again, pretty abstract language here, but we're going to ask ourselves the question, so was there a previous statement that the author was trying to support? And the answer is yes. In fact, we underlined part of it. It was the first sentence and the paragraph that said that the parks had special legal protections. So B is a match. Because we marked it in the paragraph, and I'm going to give that a big old check mark. I'm going to read the rest of the answer choices. We're going to move on to answer choice C. Now, C says that the author's purpose was to introduce a controversial hypothesis. So we have to ask the question, was there a controversial hypothesis in the paragraph? And let's remember that a hypothesis provides an explanation for something, and it's an idea that hasn't yet been proven. But this paragraph isn't trying to explain anything. And the statements about the amendments are facts, right? They're not unproven ideas. So C does not match the passage. So we can confidently eliminate answer choice C. That moves us on to our last answer choice, which is answer choice D. And that says that the author's purpose is to offer an alternative proposal. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves the question, is there an alternative proposal? The answer is no. This paragraph is talking about things that happened in the past. It's not making any kind of proposal for what we would do in the future. So we can confidently now eliminate answer choice B. And by process of elimination, friends, we now know that answer choice B is the correct answer choice. And let's remember that by keeping the why question in our noggins and by matching abstract language and the answer choices back to the specifics in the passage, and of course, by reading a wide enough window to get the context for what the author was trying to do, we were all able to successfully answer this purpose question. So, whenever you're faced with a question that asks you something and uses the words in order to, or serves to, or another kind of purpose question, remember to read a few lines before and after the lines of the topic mentioned in the question. Match abstract language to the answer choices and back to the specifics in the passage. And you, my friends, are going to be golden on these types of questions on the SAT. Friends, as always, I'm hoping that this explanation and strategy was valuable to you. From me and the entire team here at Princeton Review, you so have this. The SAT is going to be no match for your mental prowess. And folks, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to our channel for the latest updates on careers and colleges and test prep and a whole lot more. Rob Franek, Editor-in-Chief here at the Princeton Review, signing off for today. Be well.